right, we'll get started because I want to be conscious of the time we have, and I want to make sure that we use our 30 minutes fully and that I could support you most deeply. My name is John Schembari, as you know, and I am an education consultant with about 20 plus years in education. Started as a teacher, worked my way up to supervisor, then principal, then curriculum director for a district. And I've also worked for charter networks. I was a director of leadership development for a charter school network that was national. And about 7, 8 years ago, I decided to hang up my own shingle as an educational consultant and offer my services ad hoc to different clients. And that work can be a mixture of me going out and training teachers and coaching teachers on best instructional practice. It could be me working with a school leader to develop a strategic plan and to ensure that they're not overlooking anything that's going to improve instruction and student achievement at the same time that they're not duplicating their efforts. So again, Sylvia, thank you for telling me that the sound is not that bad. I appreciate that. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to pause for a moment. Oh, before we actually answer questions, let me just preface what we're here for today, even though you obviously got the notice that we were having these office hours. But I thought since many of you are looking for jobs, that there were different tidbits I could offer in terms of how to actually turn your job search into an opportunity to learn, as well as to show employers how not only are you a lifelong learner or can be a lifelong learner, but how you could offer value add by being a mentor or trainer. So when I say how to employ your teacher skills, I don't necessarily mean that you've had to go to school to become a teacher, but we're really talking more so about your leadership and learning skills and how you want to reference those in an interview. So, like I said, I'm going to pause now for a minute to see if there are any questions. If not, I definitely have a few that I could answer for you. Okay, I'll wait a moment or two longer, and then I will get started with some ideas that might, or some questions and answers that might jog your thoughts. And one question that when I talk about this subject with folks such as yourself, that often comes up is, well, what exactly is meant by a lifelong learner? Well, that can mean several things, but to me, that means someone that, regardless of where they are in their professional journey, even people who have their doctorates and 20 years of experience, that they're still open to learning more and that they're not in this mindset that, oh, I'm, 50 years in, or it's a long time, 25 years in, and I know everything that there is to know about this subject. Well, things change, tech changes, ideas change, culture changes. And so people who are more seasoned can actually learn many important things from younger or clients from other generations. Conversely, lifelong learning to me also means if you are a brand new worker in the workforce, if you're right out of college or right out of high school, not thinking that just because someone is over the age of 40 that they don't know what they're talking about. So being open to listening to others and increasing your craft in the process. So in an interview, if anyone asks you what a lifelong learner is, explain to them that to you, that definitely means somebody that is open to learning new ideas, new ways of doing things, as well as open to self-feedback and looking at one's work and reflecting. That's what it means to be a lifelong learner. And again, you could even be bringing in some of the generational topics that we were just discussing, depending on where you are in your journey. If you are more seasoned, You're definitely going to want to highlight that you are open to learning from others, perhaps give examples of what that could look like or where you've done that in your work. You also want to highlight any tech skills you have. Let's face it, AI is going to be a major player no matter what industry you're in. So, especially if you are more seasoned, do you have any work product that shows you're using AI, whether that's using AI to answer a work project question and then building in some of its suggestions in a work plan? Well, oh, Sylvia has a question. Would trade journals be a good source of material to source to see if background is current, keeping current? Sure. You always want to be a learner in that regard. I'll give you an example in my field of education. There are two folks that I rely on heavily. One is named gentleman named Kim Marshall. He produces a weekly Marshall memo that highlights all little snapshots of all the journals in K-12 education that came out this month. Actually, no, this week. And then there's also a lady by the name of Jen David Lang, and she produces a monthly, almost like Cliff's Notes for education books that came out that month. So I would highly recommend, no matter what field you're in, seeing if there is such a resource. And if not, maybe seeing how you might use AI to create that resource for yourself. Sylvia, did I answer your question? Thank you, Sylvia. Like I said, anyone, if you have more questions, please feel free to interject. I'm happy to take them, and then I could always get to my questions later. The purpose for this conversation is really to help you. So, great. So, Sylvia, you have another question. Oh, maybe she meant yes, I answered her last question, but she knows where to find me if she needs to. Okay, so I kind of alluded to this next comment when I was talking about the fact that people might get confused by the title of this presentation and think, well, I'm not a formal teacher. How do I show my teacher when, or my teacherness when I go on an interview? And again, I'll highlight this again. This is really about how you show leadership and mentorship. So, and again, that ties right into lifelong learner. So when you go for an interview, if there have been examples in your career where you have led a team or you even informally, and that's really important to talk about it, not just needing to be formal, but even informally helping a colleague learn a new software platform for the business that you're in. Those count. So make sure you have a story to talk about that. And that's how you can show that you are a teacher in a sense. So what can that story look like? There are a couple of frameworks out there, but one of the frameworks I really like is called STAR, where it's you lay the situation out, you talk about the tasks that were before you, what the goals were and why you were supporting, say, your colleague. Then you talk about the actions you took and the result. So the situation, I'll give an example. Could be something as simple as we got a new software system. Although we had formalized training, it was online and people still had questions and were still confused. That's the situation. The task was for me, having been in my position for 5 years, 10 years, blah, 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 to help my colleagues as best I could, given that I have had other training in addition to this training on how to integrate and access software platforms. So even though it wasn't my formal job role, I took it upon myself to help my colleagues in the next 3 cubicles. From doing that, our goals were the following, or my goals working with them were A, B, C, and D. And by the way, that's exactly what a teacher should do. They should be putting on board what the learning objective is, and then how students will know that they're successful in meeting those learning objectives. You could weave something like this right into your story and say, so our objectives were this, our tasks were this, then these were my actions to meet those objectives, and these were the results by, i.e., deciding to host a brown bag lunch series where every day this week I worked through a different part of the platform. And by doing that, by the end of that week, 80% of my colleagues indicated that they felt comfortable or very comfortable in using this software platform. So if you have examples like that, you definitely want to use those examples when you're talking about being a lifelong learner in interviews, when you're talking about not only being open to learning from others, but where, again, you could serve as that team player and that leader. And that's going to hopefully help you stand out over candidates that can't articulate that as fluently. So said a lot there. And we do have about 20, 25 minutes. So definitely have, like I said, more things we can go over. But let me take a pause there and, again, see if anyone has any questions. Okay, hopefully those questions will come in. If you want, no pressure. So we talked a little bit about how you could respond to showing your leadership capabilities. It's not even just about telling, but also asking. And the questions you ask will send a message to the interviewer that you're open to hearing how they do things. So now Cassidy has a question. Oh, Cassidy, could you help me out? I see the chat feature. Where is the Q&A? Or could you just perhaps highlight those for me? Let me look for the Q&A if I could find it. Yeah, okay. Click on the little question mark next to the chat. Okay, let's see here. Okay, here we go. Thank you, Cassidy. All right, so Adriana has, and then I will get to Anonymous. I am definitely a lifelong learner, have a career of over 25 plus years, and at the moment starting my own marketing consulting agency. Kudos to you. Plus learning and using AI. I know the feeling. What I struggle with are people who think they are quite knowledgeable in marketing and they are not, yet they are my potential clients. How can I teach them? They should be open to learn. They are not. It's a issue that I encounter as a consultant as well. People who think they know more than they actually know. So a couple ways you could do it is not just tell, but show. Have exemplars of what you're talking about that they could see. And that might help them realize that they don't know as much as they think they know, and position them to ask you more about it. So how do you get them curious about asking for more rather than you telling them? I would definitely do something like that to bring those people along. Another way to do it, and this is more for when you get on the job, like you said with your clients, also present case studies and ask them to tell you how they would solve it. So it's a low risk environment where you could debrief and go over those ideas in a low stakes environment and then share how you would solve that issue. So those are some ways that I try to work with clients who think they know more than they do. I mean, there are many more ways, but those are just some of the ways that come to the top of my mind. The other thing you could always do, I'll add this, is you can leverage your existing clients as you get them to, because sometimes people like listening to their peers more than the consultant. Anonymous, what are some ways I can show potential employers that I am a lifelong learner during job interviews? Well, definitely the way that we've been talking about. It's also in the questions you asked. We talked about the STAR method and how you could demonstrate through actual examples how you have led. And you could also be asking questions such as, well, what kind of mentorship programs are here? Or are there opportunities, whether formal or informal, for workers to have a role in decision making? Now, that's more on the leadership side, and I recommend that. I mean, I recognize that, Anonymous. But on the lifelong learner side, I would bring in even what Sylvia was talking about before about resources. Highlight some articles that you've recently read and not just highlight them, but talk about how you implemented suggestions from them. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of the way you could do that. So in the training space, in education, I work with a lot of groups of teachers. They're called PLCs, professional learning communities. And in that, I'm often asking them in that time that we have together, I'm often asking them to collaborate and to not only help the teachers that they're coaching, but to help each other to grow. And one way that they can grow is by taking an article, looking at that article, looking at what they agree with. This is called the 4 A's, by the way. What they agree with, what they argue against, what they think the author is assuming in writing that article, and what they plan on implementing or actualizing. I'm forgetting actually the term, but it'll come to me. Applying, there it is. So you could do something like that in your own field, Anonymous. How do you take resources like articles and utilize them to improve your practice moving forward? That's a great way to show that you're keeping current and that you're a lifelong learner. And then Patrick has a question. What questions would be asked by interviewers, allowing us to show how in a lifelong learner or how I'm a lifelong learner or addressing my mentorship and leadership skills and experiences? Okay. So one question that often comes up in interviews, I don't care what field you're in, is tell me about something you're not strong in. Tell me about your greatest weakness. Comes up all the time. And it's meant to be a stumper question, but if you know how to answer it in advance, it's actually not that hard to answer, and you could turn it around to your advantage. So when somebody is asking you, tell me about your greatest weakness, they're not really asking about a weakness that you still have and you have not basically surmounted. What they're really trying to figure out is if indeed you're reflective and you are someone interested in self-growth. And so that could be a way you integrate how you are improving your processes. So for example, I tend to see myself, I don't know if others see me this way, as innovative and as a visionary. But typical of visionaries, sometimes the details stress me out, but the details are important to ensure that you could take a big idea and actually synthesize it into a plan of action so it doesn't just stay a big idea. So I've started really implementing checklists, utilizing AI to tell me how do I take this big idea and actually create a strategic plan around it? What would success look like? So that's how I turn my weakness in an opportunity to show my own interest in my own growth. So that is one of the key ways I would turn that question around, Patrick, to answer your question. Patrick, did that make sense? Okay, hopefully it made sense for Patrick. Where were we? Anyway, so yes, I think we've kind of nailed it when we talked about, what you could do to show that you're a lifelong learner. And thank you, Patrick. I see the yes. And hopefully Patrick's question also helped us to delve into that a little bit more. So another question is that I've gotten from people looking for jobs is how that they can show, or how can they describe how they've served as a mentor or a coach. And again, I think we've also highlighted that question fairly extensively as well. So now the thing I would add to that is, let's turn to the interview itself. Now, I look at an interview as a two-way street. Yes, the interviewer is interviewing you, but how are you also a partner, an equal partner in the interview? So it's not just an opportunity for them to interview you, but you really need to use it as an opportunity to interview them. Because just like they're looking at culture fit, you also want to look at culture fit. So it's really important that you look for certain nonverbal cues to see also how your answers are resonating and if your points are getting through. Also, you want to make sure that you're both talking about the same thing and on the same page, particularly if you end up getting the job. You don't want to have a situation where somebody says, well, I told you that. Well, no, you didn't. And there are no fail-safe ways, because I do believe people are on their best behavior on interviews or in interviews, both employer and impossible employee, just like on dates. But I do think there are ways that you could help yourself. So number one, if you're saying something and somebody's face looks confused, stop and say, oh, should I rephrase that? Or if you notice that they're not looking at you and they're looking at other things, that tends to mean they're bored, which means the explanation might be going on a little too long, kind of like what I'm doing here. So you might want to wrap up what you're saying if you notice that. The other things I would do is I would check for quote unquote understanding. Just like as an educator, I check for student understanding. So one way you could do this is say, what resonates with you with what I just said? Or does anything I say, or how does what I say resonate with you? Am I on the right page or on the right track in terms of articulating what will be necessary in this job? So you want to highlight and look for those nonverbal cues. Oh, obviously, someone looking at their Apple Watch, dead giveaway. And those questions. Now, another teacher move. If you get an answer that is not very deep, and let's face it, young people do this all the time. Do you understand? Yes. Okay, well, I need more than that. Well, what exactly do you understand? Can you tell me what you understand? And oftentimes teachers will find out the kids really don't understand. So how can you take a question further? Now, not only by asking up a follow-up question. So if the employer answers a question, but it's still leaving you wanting, you could say something like, tell me more about that. Could you follow up on that? The other tool I would recommend is there is something called DOK question stems. Those stand for depth of knowledge question stems. And you can find them on the internet, where you could be asking higher level questions or asking higher level follow-up questions to get that deeper response from your administrator or from the possible employer, from the people interviewing you. I'll take a moment. Any other questions? We have about 5 more minutes, and I want to make sure I answer your questions first. Okay, we've also already talked about the following, and that is handling behavioral questions. And really, if we think about it, being a lifelong learner, how do you demonstrate leadership? How are you reflective in what hasn't worked and how you went back to the drawing board and did something differently? All of everything we're talking about really is about behavior. It's not, I think, and I'm sure you've noticed this, it's not about those hard skills, it's about those soft skills. So again, remember, these are some ways. So don't get tripped up if someone doesn't ask you point out or point blank, how do you exhibit leadership? If they ask you something more subtly in terms of what are you looking for in a position, you could be bringing in that you want opportunities to be mentored or to mentor. And again, that gets to those same behavioral things that they might actually be looking for. They're just not saying it. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, what do you want to say if you want to be coachable or to show that you're coachable? Again, use those examples of where you've quote unquote failed at something and how you've accessed other research, how you might have gone to another colleague. Really, really important. Another thing to consider is to ask them how they mentor the people that work for them. Do they set up a weekly meeting with their employees? Not when there's a problem, but just on a weekly basis. Is there a way that you could meet with your hiring manager to talk about issues? That's a great way to show that you want that feedback, that you want that ongoing support, that you don't necessarily want to be out there on your own. But yet at the same time, if you set up that weekly cadence or every other week, it shows that you are independent enough to work on your own those other times. And so that is something else that I would recommend doing to show that you are coachable. Questions? Okay, you got 2 minutes. I'm going to leave you very quickly with another thought. How do you prepare for an interview as a learner? One idea I would highly recommend is use Cornell notes. Yes, we all take notes when we interview, but Cornell notes, and you can find them online, is a specific way of taking notes on one side of the paper, and on the other side of the paper, you're putting your questions. And if you tie that with the DOK question stems that I talked about, your questions that you're apt to ask in the interview will be deeper. And then at the bottom of the Cornell notes, you summarize your notes. And that'll show the employers that you really understand not only hopefully the company, but the role that you're hopefully applying for. So that's what I have for you today. I'll stay on for about 5 more minutes if the system lets me, and answer any lingering questions. But other than that, I hope you reach out to me. My name is John Schembari from Have a Life Teaching, and you can find me online, on my podcast, on my LinkedIn, and I hope to help you there. Here on Work It Daily as well. Alrighty, I guess I will end it. But again, do reach out if I could assist in any way, and I hope to see you on future office hours with me. Thanks again for coming. I appreciate it, and thank you, Patrick, Adriana, Anonymous, Sylvia, anybody else out there. Thank you for asking the questions you did. Very important questions that benefited everyone, I believe. So have a great day.